So welcome to everyone who's just recently joined. I've just introduced myself. My name is Alicia. Please feel free to click on the link in the chat that sends you to a Mentipoll just to let us know where you're currently at in your education journey. I'm going to hand over to Alex. If you wanted to perhaps share your slides, Alex, get those ready. But yeah, feel free to say hello in the chat box, ask any questions you've got throughout. There will be some time towards the end of the session where we can kind of answer your questions about things like application process, funding, finding supervisors, what Leicester's like. I mentioned just previously that Alex and I both studied our PhDs at Leicester as well, so we can sort of provide you with a bit of insight there as well. So good afternoon to everyone saying hello on the chat. That's lovely to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to Dr. Alex Goddard, who's the head of the Doctoral College here at the University of Leicester. He'll be sort of delivering a presentation today. I will be also in the chat as well, sort of helping out with some of those questions. If there are any links I can post throughout Alex's presentation, I will pop them in there as well. So you should be able to find the links as you see them on the screen. So over to you, Alex.
Thank you very much. So as I go through, if you do have questions about the content, post them in the chat as we go, and I'll pick them up at the end of each section. So what we're going to talk through in this order is clarifying what a PhD is, so specifically what a PhD in the UK and at Leicester looks like, how you might go about financing your studies, how you would go about finding a project, and then how to actually apply for a project. So the first question, and I hope most of you know what or have an idea of what a PhD is. So a PhD is technically a Doctor of Philosophy degree. There are also other variants of this higher degree, which include a DPhil, a DSoc-Sci, an MD, a PsyD, a DClin-Sci. So instead of calling things PhD, we tend to use the acronym PGR, which is a postgraduate researcher, or call the degree postgraduate study or a research degree. And that's those three are the catch-all terms for anyone studying or looking to study any of those degree types. And as you'd expect, the doctorate, the research degree, is at the pinnacle of education. So you start off with quite a broad education, and as you go through the layers of study, you're getting more and more specialised. And whilst you might have done a master's degree or a bachelor's dissertation at the end of an undergraduate degree, and you think they're specialised, when you get to the PhD, you're really probing a specific subpart of a discipline. And so it is looking at a very narrow field at a very, very advanced level. And as I can show you here, you've got the different levels of courses as we understand them in the UK. So the bachelor's with honours is seen as a level 6 qualification, a master's is a level 7, and a doctorate is a level 8. So you can do a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a doctorate, and they're all adding to your CV or education portfolio. So what does a PhD or a research degree actually entail? So it's about you as an individual, you as a researcher, making an original contribution, finding something novel and revealing about the subject that you want to look at. It's also about developing you as a researcher and a professional, so that when you finish your degree, not only do you have the degree, you've also built your skills base, your awareness, your general knowledge, and you've got lots of transferable skills. So you're both a specialist in your area as well as a specialist in research and analysis. And so the commitment that you're looking at tends to be 3 to 5 years full-time or 4 to 8 years part-time. And that's you're looking to, it is 3 to 5 years full-time or 4 to 8 years part-time from when you start. You might have periods of breaks, you might need extra time, and that'll be from when you start to when you end up with the degree at the end of it. So what might a typical PhD or research degree program look like? Well, the first stage when you're starting off in the area might be double-checking your literature, reading around the subject, looking at all of the recent advances in the area that you want to study. And then you'll start to begin your original research, collecting your results, analysing the data and building a story and going on a research journey as you compile those. And then you're going to bring them all together in what we call a thesis or a research dissertation. Okay, so you'll put all of this together in quite a sizable document, which is 50 to 80,000 words, and you submit that at the end of your program. And then you have an examination, which is the Viva Voce exam. So it's an oral defense of your thesis. And if you successfully pass all of those milestones along the way, then you are now a research degree award holder. You have a doctoral research degree. The main stakeholder in your research is your supervisor, and I'll cover this in a bit more detail later on. But they're there to guide you throughout your program, to signpost you to upcoming events, literature that's just been published, helping you bounce back your ideas as you're going through the journey. So they're your main supporter, and they help you keep on track and help you with the guidance that you need to complete your doctorate degree. And if in your head you build an idea of what a PhD student might look like, the answer is there's no typical researcher. There are many different research degree programs available. There are different modes of study, from campus-based to distance, from split site, and also dual award. You can study part-time and full-time. And then you've got different ways that people might be funded. So there's UKRI, which is a large UK funder. You might be funded by charities that support research. University studentships, you might be sponsored from your own sources, or you might be self-funded. We also have a high diversity of researchers and have a large number that are non-UK nationals that are studying here. And even some of those, well, a large number of those will also have various education backgrounds and experiences. I've seen a couple of chat messages. I will pick those up later. I've got some slides and some tips on those as we go forward. So if you have anything that you want to know about what a general PhD is, pop that in the chat as we go through, and I'll pick it up at the end. So what we're going to move on to now is the financing or funding your PhD. Okay. So what does it cost? So the main costs that you'll know about are things called tuition fees, and the rate for tuition fees was set, I believe, on the 2nd of May. So those numbers will be published soon on websites across the country, and these are set nationally by UKRI. The other thing that you need to consider is what you actually need to what funds you need to actually conduct your research. So if you need to go on field work, have you got expenses for travel? If you need to buy in chemicals, is there a budget to buy the chemicals? If you need to do interviews, do you have funds to pay for transcription services? So the tuition fees are largely set at a base rate. We have a home and an international base fee rate. The research costs will be specific to the actual degree that you're doing. And if you're developing your own project, then it's discussing these with the supervisors about what it would actually cost to deliver that research. Now, the other extremely important consideration is how you're going to sustain yourself whilst you're undertaking the PhD. So it is a long-term commitment. So a full-time PhD takes typically 4 years to complete. Some a little bit less and some a little bit longer. And a part-time PhD is not typically around 7 years. So if you're not receiving a stipend or external sponsorship to help you with your living costs, how are you going to afford to live in those times? And I'll go through some options for that shortly. So if you're looking for funding to actually do your PhD or PGR program, you can obtain something called a scholarship or a studentship. So the University of Leicester has recently had some large schemes from the Future 100 and the Future 50 scholarships. These programs are currently closed for the majority of recruitment, but there are other opportunities. So there might be charity funding, there might be calls for UKRI funded projects, and you'd apply for these like you would a job. If you're looking for a lower award, you can directly approach bodies for sponsorship. There are various charities out there and also charity search sites, and I'll pop one in the chat a bit later. But you can fund your PhD from your own finances as well. And so we'll also cover the Student Finance England for those that are UK nationals. If you've studied at the University of Leicester for an undergraduate or a master's degree, or so a postgraduate taught, you're entitled to an alumni discount on your tuition fees, and that applies only to the tuition fee element, not to the research costs. And there are also various funded scholarships that are advertised. The link is in the chat if you want to look at some of those opportunities that are currently available. I think it's that link. And there's also this link, which is the research degrees funded opportunities. One of the largest funders of research degrees in the UK is UKRI Funding. So UKRI is the UK Research and Innovation Council, and they tend to fund PhDs through doctoral consortia programs. They're either called a DTP or a CDT. These are largely advertised in the autumn, with interviews happening in the spring for a start date in September. There may still be some opportunities on these available, but typically if you want some of this funding, you'd be needing to look at applying for autumn of 2024 start date. They have quite a long lead time because they are highly competitive. There are other funders that fund in a similar way to UKRI, which are the Leverhulme Trust. You've got Wellcome Trust, Hope Against Cancer, British Heart Foundation, and various others. Again, these are highly competitive, normally applied for like a job or a fellowship. And again, if you were looking to apply for these, you'd probably be looking to apply for autumn of 2024. There are obviously a lot of benefits to having a funded PhD. This provides funding for most of the degree. So that would be living expenses, tuition fees, and the research costs. They tend to have enhanced support packages, and as well as cohort training and a cohort feel to their approach. There will be a lot of external collaborators, and you can build your networks quite well. And for some of these, you have to apply for a ready-built project. However, some of the funders in the arts, humanities, and social sciences do allow students to put forward their own projects under some of the calls. There are some large downsides to the funded programs, though, in that they are highly competitive with very strict deadlines. So as I said, a lot of the windows for applying for those funded positions have already closed for a start in 2023. And so most opportunities that will be next available will be advertised in the autumn of 23 for a September 2024 start date. They are very limited, and that's what makes them highly competitive. But they also have some quite strict attendance requirements for training and cohort events that mean that you've got to take that into consideration when you're designing your own research approach and journeys. Aside from the large funders, as I said, there are other funding. So there's Turn to Us as a charity search site that you can use, and many people can apply for different types of funding under that based on different rules. There are also other smaller funders, such as trade unions, royal societies, professional bodies, that allow funding for either their members or family members of those different bodies. For those not in the UK, well, for those in the UK, there are graduate loans, and I'll detail those in a bit more detail shortly. You can take private loans out, but do consider your financial situation and that you will have to repay whatever you borrow. So do consider those in detail. Do seek independent financial advice if you are looking to go down that route for funding. And if you have access to UK libraries, UK university libraries, there are various books, including things like the Guide to Educational Grants, that will be within the library archives, or not archives, in the library stores. So for those that are a UK resident or an EU resident with settled status, you can apply for a postgraduate loan. This has to be your first full course at that level, and the details are on the screen. So it is quite strict in the eligibility criteria, but you can look into this in more detail as needed. And I'm happy to take some questions on it if you have any specific questions. The rate that they fund for the doctoral loan is around 28,000, and they pay this in 3 installments. So should be enough to cover your tuition fees, but it's not a generous amount of funding to also support your living arrangements and everything else. So do consider whether the doctoral loan would be enough for you to fully study full-time. And there is an example of the repayment. So you only start to repay things like the doctoral loan after you obtain a minimum income. So if you have a starter job after your PhD, then you might not be required to repay. But if you have various undergraduate and the postgraduate loans out, you can see on the screen how your salary income would lead to the total loan repayment. Okay, so if we move on to choosing a PhD or finding a supervisor. So you have 2 options when you're looking for a PhD, and these are the typical choices. So in some disciplines, particularly the physical sciences, life sciences, engineering, and subjects in those areas, you're probably looking at a project that's already been advertised. If you're in the arts, humanities, social science, or fully self-funding, you might be looking to find a supervisor to host your project and your research and help you with where you want to go to. So if you're looking to apply for advertised position, a really good starting site is jobs.ac.uk, but you can also look at the university's advertised positions. We tend to advertise on both portals. If you're looking to understand what some academics might be supervising, you can also look at some of the journal articles that they're published. You might have read quite a lot of research materials in your master's degree, and so you might have an affinity to those that you're reading regularly. You can also discuss this with current tutors in your own organisations or through events such as this and open days that we host. The supervisor is an absolutely critical component of your PhD. They are there as your mentor throughout the programme. They will have specialist subject knowledge, and they're there to motivate you and help guide you from the start point to the end point. It is quite normal in the UK and at Leicester that you will have 2 supervisors, and they might be there for different roles and responsibility. Now, if you want to approach a supervisor, you will need to introduce yourself. So you might want to email them with a brief introduction of who you are. Include a little about your proposal, your motivation for wanting to do the research, and what you hope to address. Include some details about the timescale, so when are you looking to start and whether you want to study full-time or part-time. And then if you haven't already got a proposal, offer to send over a full proposal. The response that you've received back should indicate whether the academic has the time or the space to supervise you, whether they are interested in your topic, and let you know what the next steps are. If you haven't got a response back, it could be that either the university emails have been filtered out, or your emails have been filtered out by the university system, or that the academic does not have time to supervise you. And so what you really need is a supervisor that is engaging with you actively. So if we go on applying for a PhD, so how would you actually apply? You've worked out how you want to fund the PhD. You might have got a couple of supervisors potentially interested. So as I've said, there are a couple of routes. For funded projects, you need to apply like applying for a job. If you're generating your own project that's not funded, or the funding call invites you to submit your own proposal, then you need to develop that project proposal, and in both instances, you'll need to complete an application form. If it's a funded project that you're applying for, you need to check the start dates and check the requirements. They have quite strict start dates. So if you have overlapping commitments that prevent you from starting in the intended start date, that might mean that you're not able to take up the position. If that's the case and you're offered the PhD, you can look at deferring entry, but that's not always possible. Funding projects, as well as having money, have quite strict reporting requirements and spend periods. So that's why they have very strict start dates. And they also want to build the cohort and keep everyone trained and developed and progressing in a similar way. If you're developing your own project, on each of the subject pages, you'll see these three icons at the bottom, and they allow you to apply for the type of degree that you want to apply for. So you'll need to develop your proposal, have some suitable supervisors lined up, and check start dates if they're applicable. Our main start date is the late September, early October entry, as with the undergraduate started term. We have another large intake in January, and some schools have a third intake in May. If you're looking to start outside of those three core periods, it is possible, but it might require some prior discussion. A full-time PhD is normally conducted as it would be for a full-time job in the UK. So you're looking at around 35 to 37.5 hours a week on average. Part-time is typically half of that and is quite compatible with part-time working arrangements with other commitments such as jobs, caring responsibilities and things like that. And the part-time will change the degree programme from 4 years to 7 years. Distance learning means that you will not be you do not have to visit the university campus. So full-time and part-time campus-based study means the expectation is that you'll conduct the majority of your research on the University of Leicester campus using the University of Leicester facilities and networks. Distance learning means you can be based in your home location or a different work location, and that you won't be required to travel to the university. Distance learning is also only available as a part-time degree mode of study. And so if you click those red boxes on the discipline page, it'll take you through to the application process and you can upload the documents that you need to the project proposal and complete your qualifications and other requirements. And so this is just a quick view of what you would be required to put in. So you can start to prepare it before you apply. So there's the personal details, contact details, any agent details, your qualifications experience, a personal statement, a research proposal, and then your identity requirements, so passport details, referees, and how you might be funding your period of study. So you can see it's quite similar to a typical UK job application. And when you're thinking about writing your statements, think about what you want to do. So why do you want to do the course? What are your career goals or passions for this subject? Why would you be a good student on that course? And what skills and previous experience do you have that would help you complete the research? And it's also about you. What makes you who you are? What is it that brings you together and supports you? And this is the kind of things that you might want to put into the personal statement. So what are your passions? What are your ambitions? Why is the PhD or the research degree pivotal in your life at the moment? Sell yourself as well as your ambitions and motivations. 4 years of study on one particular topic or 7 years part-time is quite a substantial period of time. So you need to prove that you've got the motivation to complete that study period. There is a preparing for the PhD proposal writing course that you can also use to help prepare your proposal. There's guidance and other training that's available there. So if you are writing your proposal, do have a look at that course, do practice on it, and do take up that opportunity. That is all the slides I've got on the introductions of a PhD, how to go about applying. I'll hand over to you, Alicia, unless you want me to take questions now.
We have had a few questions come through, so I've kind of pinned them in the chat. So I think you did kind of touch on this in your presentation about prospective supervisors that you that people have contacted that haven't responded? Is there any sort of special way? And I think you kind of addressed that in your presentation.
Well, I think to just retouch on it, I think it's making sure that the subject line includes what you're actually approaching them for. So you're a prospective PGR that's looking to study. You might want to include how you're intending to finance that study. And then in that email, it is just about those clear points of what you're looking to do, where you're up to with your studies, when you're looking to start, how ready are you? Because sometimes it takes a bit of time for the supervisor to interact with your proposal. You might need to co-write it a little bit to make it viable. But if you've not had any response from supervisors, then it's either that your subject line is not attractive, or that they can't understand what you're asking for from the email. So you need to be explicitly clear that you're a prospective PhD, PGR, research degree student, that you're looking for them to supervise your study. You're hoping to start in X month of X year. This is the working title, and a brief proposal is attached. And you don't want your proposal to be that detailed, so you're probably looking about 300 to 500 words for the proposal.
Absolutely. No, that's really good advice. Thank you. And we've had a couple of questions come in from one of our viewers called Shelby, who has asked about, have the final PhD tuition amounts been decided for this year? If not, is there a time frame with the final tuition amounts?
Yep. So I think, as I said, UKRI announced the base rate for tuition fees as of the 2nd of May. So this has been updated and communicated outwards. So it will be on our web pages shortly. So depending on what you're studying and how you're studying, that will inform what your fee rate is.
That's great. And then another question as well from Shelby about when will the COA spreadsheet be issued to students who need to take out US loans to cover tuition?
I do not know what the COA spreadsheet is, unfortunately.
That's absolutely fine. Shelby, if you wanted to kind of expand a little bit more, I can definitely take a look in the background as well and see if I can find some information on our website for that too. So bear with us on that one. We had a sort of a visa related question from Ashti, who's joining the University of Leicester for a master's as an international student in molecular biology. If they choose to pursue a PhD full time, what will the visa situation be? Do you have to reapply for your student visa?
My understanding is that you would probably need to reapply, because the visa that you apply for has a set period, and you'll need to complete your degrees within that original period. So and my understanding is that the visa that you'd normally apply for is not generous enough to do the master's degree and a PhD without reapplying between the two. It's also possible that the way that we classify the different modes of study might mean that you need a slightly different visa or CAS that's issued against it. So yes, I think the short version is that you should expect to have to reapply for the visa when you change modes of study. It'd be similar from going from a bachelor's to a master's, that you'd have to reapply for the visa for that transition as well most of the time.
Yes. And then Ashley also asked, along with funding, will there be a certain amount paid to the researchers as well for doing the research, in brackets a salary? And will the citizenship visa process not be considered while doing a PhD?
So settled status, right to remain in the UK, citizenship for becoming a UK national, the PhD does not count towards that, because you're normally here on a student visa, and so it only counts, I believe, different visa types that contribute towards that citizenship status. So in terms of funding, the living expenses, there is stipend for some positions, and this is clearly indicated in adverts. The base rate for this is around £18,000 a year, which is tax-free. But as I said, it's only funded positions. So funded positions normally provide full coverage of the tuition fees, the research costs, and a stipend. There are some bursary scholarship schemes that will include the tuition fees and research costs, but not a stipend. But all of these will be clearly stated on the project that's available.
Thank you. I found a bit of information for Shelby, so I've just replied that as well, and there's an email address there to Shelby for the US loans team, where all that information is situated on our website. So I put the link there and the email address too.
So I think Pamela's is next.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so Pamela, if you're looking to study full-time campus-based, our expectation is that you live within commuting distance of the university, and we generally expect people to be on campus 5 days a week. However, we are working in an agile way, so that there is you can have a flexible working arrangement, and it's about whether or not you can complete your research to the satisfaction of your supervisors and your various review panels if you're not within distance, well, not able to easily access the university. If you want to stay that remote, then the advice might be that you consider a part-time PhD or even a distance learning PhD, depending on your ability to be on the University of Leicester campus.
Lovely, thank you for that one, Alex. So we've had a question from Fiona about how many hours per week are PhD students allowed to work?
Okay. Yes. So, if that it's not technically well, it's not a simple question is the answer. So the guidance is that if you're doing a full-time PhD, you're expected to work the equivalent of full-time hours, that you need to devote yourself to the PhD, but we recognize that people need an alternative income stream at times or a top up to help them with their living expenses. For those that are international, there is a hard limit set by the visa community, and I believe it's 20 hours per week from the start of your visa period to the end of your visa period, including post-submission periods. For those that are in the UK, there obviously isn't the visa restriction. But for both sets, our general advice is to work no more than 8 hours a week. The reason that we've said 8 hours a week is this is an equivalent of a day a week, roughly, that you'd lose from your PhD research. If you're looking at regularly working 2 or more days a week, you might want to consider switching from full-time study to part-time study. Otherwise, you're going to lose substantial research time through working, or you're going to tire yourself out both mentally and physically, and you might then find it harder to study and complete the requirements of the PhD. Seasonal work, occasional work is encouraged to help with your experiences. And there will be opportunities for short-term seasonal work in most of the schools departments through university activities. So I think in summary, do consider your options. Don't look to work more than a day a week. And if you are studying full-time, you do need approval from your supervisors to make sure that it's compatible with your intended research program and timelines.
Yeah, definitely. I think perhaps another question that sort of runs in theme with this is actually someone's asked if they're admitted for a PhD, can they take a postgraduate diploma in education concurrently, or can they do their PhD in another basic degree? And I think for the same reasons relating to the work situation, it's not possible.
So our Senate regulations, so these are the regulations that govern what you can actually do and what you're expected to do as part of the PhD. They actually prevent you doing 2 degrees at any one point. There is some overlap whilst you're waiting for the outcomes of, say, a master's and are just initially starting the PhD. But most universities follow the same program, which is you can only be registered at one institution for a full-time degree of any type. So if you're looking to study 2 things in parallel, even if they're at different levels of study and different topics, I'd strongly advise you to discuss with both organisations and check that they're satisfied with the arrangements.
Regulations link in the chat as well, so if people want to kind of look into that a bit further and see what the university's official worded stance is on that.
Yeah, for the PGR, Senate Regulation 9 is the specific one.
Brilliant, thank you. And then again, I guess similar with the work theme as well. I previously studied in the UK in 2013. Will it be possible to begin a self-funded PhD course if I only have £1,000 and pay up my fees while working in the UK during my study? I think that might pose some difficulties in relation to gaining visa status.
Yeah, it would be impossible to obtain a student visa. You have to prove a minimum threshold, and my understanding is that you have to prove that you can pay the fees for quite an advanced period.
Yeah.
Also, you can only if you need a student visa, they are only granted for full-time student study, so that would still limit you to 20 hours of working time.
Yeah. Thank you. So we had another question about talk about developing your proposal. So this was after I posted up the link for the course that we offer. How do I really go about it? I have left the research community after my MSc since 2013. I've been having professional experience in the industry over the years. Will it be easy to form a good research proposal? How will I get a good research question in programming web services? It sounds like this individual would really benefit from the course, because I think that is part of what the course will help you do.
Well, that's it. I think what you've got to do is go through that course and see if that helps you to write the question. You've got to have an idea of where you are now and what you want to achieve through the PhD, what you want to explore, how you might go about exploring that. So I think it is starting with that course, but also looking at attending events such as this and other ones, maybe attending some open days and speaking to some of the academics from that area to sound off the idea you're interested in and see if there's interest there to supervise it.
Absolutely. I think this also ties in with a sort of question from Simona, who has already attempted to present a PhD proposal at Leicester, but was deemed as straying away too much from previous experience. If I need to say around what they've researched for their BA and MA dissertations, graduated both from Leicester, there's not kind of a supervisor within the university available within that topic. They said there's kind of Oxford and Cambridge, but it's difficult for them to find an opportunity there. I guess maybe that course might help them develop a proposal that can sit sort of within perhaps the realms of one or two supervisors at Leicester if you're keen to stay.
Well, that's it. And I think it's also working out how you might address that barrier between what could be perceived as a large change in fields of study, whether it's attaining some short courses, that you've done substantial reading around the subject, that you need to demonstrate that you've got knowledge, experience, and expertise that will allow you to as you put, stray away from your previous experience.
Absolutely. I think from personal experience, it's important that you do have that kind of the fundamental grounding in your subject area, because actually you're kind of at that top of that tree that Alex sort of showed, that big sort of pyramid at the start of your talk, Alex, and you very much have to have that base understanding actually of the kind of subject area you're in. So it's finding the balance between researching something completely novel and new and interesting to you, but also, relying perhaps a bit on some of your previous experience.
Well, that's it. It is all building towards that. And so whilst you might have linked things, you need to show that they're linked. You need to explain how they link and how they get you to where you want to go, where you want to start to go.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had another question come through as well. I was a general practitioner in my country and worked for some years there. I'm an asylum seeker here now. I don't have any scientific projection, but can I register for a neuroscience PhD? I think it's going to be very much a case of talking to supervisors, looking at qualifications on our course pages.
I think that's it. I think have a look at the neuroscience PhD pages and seeing whether you meet the eligibility criteria. Yeah, I think that's the approach, is have a look at the neuroscience PhD web pages, which I think is under the Psychology and Visionary Sciences School, and just see if you meet that criteria. If you don't, then it would be difficult to embark on that journey.
And then we've had another one just come through about kind of remote jobs online, and are there any restrictions? I think, again, it's that same time element, isn't it? Irrespective of whether you're going into a workplace or whether you're working remotely, it is that you don't want to end up burning yourself out.
No, it's the same. So if you're looking to study full-time, it doesn't matter what the mode of work is. Our guidance is no more than 8 hours a week. And we really would not encourage a consistent 8 hours a week for every week of the PhD program. It will be quite detrimental to your progress once it all adds up.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I think your health as well. It's balancing, you as a holistic view too.
I see one other that was missed, which is right after
Yeah.
completing your
Yeah.
master's or whilst doing a master's at a university, is it better to contact the supers personally for helping you get into a good PhD program? So whilst you're doing a master's degree, you'll have module tutors, module leads. You'll probably be working on a dissertation project with a supervisor. And I believe you also have a personal tutor. Or a pastoral tutor. So I would suggest that you just discuss it with your dissertation supervisor about what you're looking to do, what area you want to do, and look for their advice on where to go to start that conversation.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good place to start, and often actually can help sort of spark some of those conversations about where your proposals might go as well. So thank you very much for your questions. I think we've managed to get through all of them. I will just do a quick scan through through the chat, but I think we've managed to cover lots of them. I have got a couple of slides just kind of show at the end and just to get a bit of feedback. But if people do have a couple of additional questions, we may have some time in the session to be able to answer those. So please just kind of type those through, and we'll see if we can get to them in this session. I'm just going to share my screen for a moment. If you bear with me, just to get a bit of feedback on how you found this session. How useful was it for you? Did you kind of learn something new? Please do just kind of engage with us with a bit of this feedback. It gives us some insight into kind of where we can perhaps be more helpful in the future, as well as kind of inform what we've done today. So yeah, please do take a moment just to head to the same link that I posted at the very, very start of the session. Again, it's the same code as well, the same QR code, but please just let us know how useful you found this session. It's great to kind of hear some feedback, and if you have got anything else you'd like to ask, please pop it in the chat in the meantime. And I'm sure Alex will also be able to kind of pick up some of those last minute questions.
So whilst you're filling that in, Daniel's
absolutely,
about PhD supervisors and mentor students they supervise. The PhD supervisor is effectively your professional mentor. So they are there to guide you, not just in the research, but your development, and then helping you to prepare for what's next. So yes, one of your supervisors, you it also depends on your personal relationships. You might build different relationships with different supervisors. I know that I very much did. So it might be that you see one of those more for the research and one more for the development.
Yeah, definitely. And also, actually, I know quite a few colleagues who have worked across sort of two supervisors, one being a specialist in part of their project and another having that other angle on it. And they found it very useful to have that sort of element, that sort of guidance from more than one supervisor, really. Brilliant. Has anything else come through on the chat, Alex? Is there any other last minute?
The core research. Oh, can we ask for research funding from the supervisor, as they might have projects but don't publish it much? So if the supervisors have funding for projects, they will put those out as adverts. They are all advertised on our internal website, and most of those are also pushed to things like jobs.ac.uk and Find a PhD and other search sites. So if you're looking to self-fund, you might ask if the supervisor is able to provide the research costs for that project, so the consumables travel budget, and you would pay the tuition fees. But if you're looking for a fully funded PhD, all opportunities have to be publicised.
That's great, thank you. And I'll just skip over to my next slide, just in case we have people who are wanting to leave the session. Just a bit of what's next, really. You can sign up for more updates on our website about information about postgraduate study. All the webinars from this series, this is the last one actually as part of our series, but all of the webinars will be available to watch in the future. But please do contact us in the meantime. There are lots and lots of links available on our website, whether that's email addresses or telephone numbers. Just get in touch with the relevant teams if you're kind of looking for information. There is also a general inquiry form as well, so please use that if you're kind of unsure which direction it needs to go in. Our study app team will be able to kind of direct you to the right place. It's also worth saying that we have some sessions coming out in early June, postgraduate spotlights, and they'll be available to book soon, so keep an eye out on our pages for those. They will contain a bit of subject-related content, and actually for those of you interested in PhD study or soon to be joining us for PhD study, we will be having kind of a research focus within these sessions. So you'll learn and hear from some of our academics that are carrying out some of that research. So I'll stop sharing my slides and we can just see if there are any sort of last minute questions sort of coming through. But yeah, thank you very much everyone today for your engagement, and thank you very much, Alex, as well, for your time and for your lovely presentation as well, and your sort of support answering lots of questions from our students, so prospective students. So honestly, that's really much appreciated. And yeah, if there is anything sort of last minute, I don't know if we can see anything else coming through, then we can take a quick look.
So publications has come in. In the UK, it's not that common that you would leave your bachelor's or even your master's with a publication. Also quite common to not have any publications before you have your viva voce for the PhD. So if you were asked for your publications and you don't have any, you have to be quite honest and say that you don't have any. It's not uncommon, and it can be quite a standard approach not to have any publications.
Definitely. So thank you very much. I'm just going to drop that link in the chat one more time. So if you do kind of want to offer us any feedback, just let us know very quickly how useful those sessions are. We've had a couple more questions coming through actually. Are there facilities on campus for young children? Yeah.
So the campus is generally child friendly. There are lots of initiative facilities, and a lot of the campus is open to the public through the cafes and other things that are available. However, young children wouldn't be as welcome in the research environment, mainly because of health and safety and insurance concerns. There is nurseries in the vicinity of the university that are at kind of standard private nursery rates. The university has previously had a nursery, but the rates and the cost of that was similar to external providers anyway. And if you're not aware of where Leicester University campus is, it's very close to the city with lots of other facilities nearby. So there are lots of childcare facilities and other facilities for your well-being and general life.
Brilliant. So I can see we potentially have a couple more people typing, so we can leave this session just open for another moment longer, if that's okay, Alex, with you. Yep. Give people a chance to send any last minute questions they've got in. Another session like this. So it's looking likely that these sessions might not be taking place until towards the end of the year, so around sort of October, November time. The best thing to do, if you are keen to kind of hear about more content coming out from us, is to sign up to our updates. So actually, when you head to our postgraduates page, which I think I've linked in the chat previously, if you head to that page, as you get to the bottom, you can click sign up for updates. If you pop your details in there, anytime we have events that are taking place that we think are relevant to you, including things like this session, we'll be able to send you booking links and details through that. So that's the best way to kind of keep in touch with us, is through that form, and then you'll find out about our sessions that are up and coming. Oh, it's nice that you had a great experience with the Leicester professors and ready to supervise. But again, yeah, that funding can often be sort of that tricky sort of last hurdle to overcome.
It is. I'd really ask you to consider your financial situation quite early on about how you're going to afford the PhD, and if it is that you can't personally afford it, because they can be incredibly expensive, and that's without considering your own living arrangements. If you don't think you can self-fund, then you've got to hold out for the funded opportunities, and they are highly competitive.
So I can't see anybody else typing any questions. So at this point, I'm going to call time at the end of the session. Thank Alex once again. Thank you all for joining this session. Do keep an eye out for our upcoming sessions that will be taking place. And yes, I wish you all a lovely afternoon, a lovely weekend ahead. So thank you very much.
Thank you all.